Good evening. This is Crash Talk, and I'm Mike Harber, your host, and another interesting show tonight. But I'm going to change things a little bit. One, let me just say I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, and neither is anybody else that works for me. Let's keep it simple. But other than that, what I'm going to do is, we used to do an In the News when we were doing on Progressive Talk Radio. And I thought it might be a good idea to just do a session on kind of in the news or the claim of the week or something, just so each of you listeners can hear a little bit about what's happening and the success stories. We had a claim, and I'm not going to give names. We're still somewhat going through this claim, but I have a client that was referred to us by a law firm, and they spent 6 months of their life restoring a motorhome that their family and children would live in and travel. They did an amazing job. This thing was probably one of the nicest motorhomes I've ever seen. It caught fire and it burned to the ground 30 days after they completed their work on it. The insurance company came back and offered them $32,000 for this home. Now, this particular home, if you go out and buy a brand new one, they're up to $400,000 to $500,000. Now, this was a 2005. But it was upgraded, and their insurance company offered them $32,000. Well, they argued, they presented information to their insurance company, and they raised their offer to roughly $60,000. We were hired. We worked diligently. My associates and I, as a team, we worked on this together for 3 or 4 weeks and put together a presentation that went to an opposing appraiser under the appraisal clause. We're going to talk even a little bit about that tonight with our guest, but under the appraisal clause, we were able to get an additional recovery for almost $125,000 for this family. And we're still in the process now on dealing with personal property loss and some other things, loss of use, living expenses, but just to be able to see how much, if they had just accepted what was offered to them in the very beginning, $32,000, I wonder how many people are told by an insurance company, this is all we're going to pay, and they think they're done. You're not done. You have rights. You have provisions that you can assert your rights and get a fair settlement. But you have to understand what those are. And again, purpose of Crash Talk, give you information, help you understand what your rights are, how to fight the fight, how to level the playing field. And with that, my guest tonight is the North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance and the State Fire Marshal, Mike Causey. And Mike's a good old boy. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I was surprised. He's the state insurance commissioner and will take a call from a consumer to discuss an issue if they have trouble. I'm wondering in our state, if you tried to call our commissioner, Mr. Kreidler, Mike Kreidler, if he would take your call. I've never tried. So maybe we'll report back on this in the next couple of weeks. Maybe we'll see if Mike is willing to come on Crash Talk and talk to us about issues in this state. So let's do this. I've already told you I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. So let's go to Mike Causey in North Carolina.
They couldn't recommend a body shop. And so I suggested to those body shops that the first thing they needed to do was to organize, to come together, have a statewide association And it was very difficult because a lot of those shops that were so passionate about the issues didn't really see the need for being in an association, or they didn't have the time. But at any rate, we ended up forming the Independent Auto Body Association, IABA, in the late 2000, and got that going, and started immediately working on something that was called House Bill 13. And the body shops found a key legislator in Western North Carolina. And by January, when they went into session, I was ready to hit the ground running and started meetings. And that was a year, 2001, was a year that the legislature went into session in January and didn't adjourn till December. We don't have any limits on our legislative session, so it's a unique state in that regard. But at any rate, we started out with a bill that said insurance companies can't recommend. That hit a lot of backlash. The insurance companies wouldn't agree to it. And we all, the legislators said, okay, what would you agree to? And they all said, we don't steer. And they all said, we don't repair cars, we just sell policies. And ended up, we got a bill passed through a lot of work and effort with many legislative hearings. We had body shops actually come to committee meetings. And I remember one body shop owner brought 2 hoods to the committee. He brought a original equipment hood and an aftermarket hood.
Yeah.
And he had all the legislators come up there and pick up the hoods and see which one was the heaviest. And it showed videos on how the aftermarket parts didn't perform like the OEM parts. And we ended up getting that bill passed, and it's signed into law, and it's under Chapter 58 of the General Statutes, and it's 58.3-180, and it's consumer repairs, motor vehicle repairs. It's basically consumer rights. It said that, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it says insurance companies may recommend the body shop, but they must disclose to the claimant that the claimant has the right to choose whatever body shop they want. Now, that's what we got passed, and that was signed into law by Governor Easley in October of that year, and unfortunately is not being really enforced the way it should be enforced. But I had publications reach out to me and said, will you write articles about this? So I started writing articles, and I wrote articles for 8 or 9 years about body shop issues. And I worked for the next several years passionately, and most of the body shop, the association never had any money. So a lot of times I did this work without any compensation. But I have a very deep understanding. That's when I first met Erica. It was back in those days when I was working in legislation. I think I went up to Chicago for a meeting, and there she was.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's we kind of just jumped right into things. I wanted to a little bit more of your background. You're the commissioner of insurance in your state, but you're also the state fire marshal.
That's right.
That seems kind of an unusual combination.
Well, we're not the only state that has that. Mississippi and a few other states, but in North Carolina, it's an elected office, and there's only 11 states that elect the insurance commissioner. And I believe your state, I believe Washington State is one that's elected, but there's 11 that are elected. The rest are appointed by the governors.
Mm-hmm. So have you met our commissioner in the state, Mike Kreidler? Another Mike.
Oh yeah, I certainly have. He's done some great things in fighting fraud. I'm a member of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. We met often until this year. Now the coronavirus has slowed things down this year. We've done a lot of these virtual.
Sure, sure. No, it's made a big difference in everything. You're an Army veteran. You served Vietnam?
That I was drafted. I was the last year of the draft, and I served. The Army put me in military police school, so I graduated military police school, and the Army sent me overseas to Okinawa, Japan. During the Vietnam era, we were a support base for Vietnam, and I went over there as a military police. I play a trombone, so they had a Army band, the 29th Army Band, based in Sukaran, Okinawa, needed a trombone player, so they asked me to play a few bars, and the next thing you know, they said, look, we need you in the band. So I tell people I had a well-rounded military experience. I came home, I played in the National Guard band in North Carolina, I played in Raleigh, I played in the United States Army Reserve Band out of Charlotte. So I had some good times with the military playing in bands.
Well, thank you for your service. And it's kind of funny. I was the first year they did away with college deferments during Vietnam. And I was the first year that they used the lottery system. I was playing football in college, and my first year, and then Nixon sent me his greetings, and it says, "We want you." So I ended up getting drafted, and fortunately, I didn't see any combat. I stayed stateside. That's how I ended up in the Northwest, because I grew up in St. Louis.
Oh,
But I ended up as a veterinary in the veterinary services as a food inspector. So I had a great job too.
Well, we have that in common. We're both drafted into the military. So.
Yeah. During our time of service, you really didn't want the public to know that you were military, because they weren't very fond of us.
Well, I can remember coming back from overseas, and they told us before we got on the plane, get out of your uniform, change into civilian clothes, because you didn't want to get attacked. So that's how bad it was. I well remember that.
I do too.
Into Travis Air Force Base.
Yep, I remember too. Well, getting back, you kind of launched right into the helping the glass repairers, the glass companies, and the body shops. I'm wondering, and it sounds like you do have a really good understanding of kind of how the industries, sometimes they work together, and sometimes it's more like this. You talked about steering. How does your state, is there any regulation on the direct repair program shops, the ones that are signed contracts with the insurance companies? Is there any other requirements with that?
Well, that's generally considered a contract, and it's between the body shop and the insurance company. So they do have a lot of leverage there. The insurance companies, when those body shops sign those contracts, they agree to do certain things. We've worked for years to try to tighten up loopholes and to hold the insurance companies more accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And just my feedback, and all the years that I've worked with the body shops, there's a lot of body shops, they'll complain loudly about how unfair this, that, or the other. But when you try to get those folks to be active in your statewide body shop association, talk to your state senators and your state representatives, let them hear from you, because that's the only way we're going to change anything, is to get broad consensus all across different geographic areas of a state and the legislators hear it loud and clear. And you have to show where it's actually harming consumers. And we've seen change happen in it, and you can't get everything you want all in one swoop. It's little gradual steps. So a lot of these small body shops have gone by the wayside years ago, and I'd like to see more of the small business owners band together for the benefit of their business and their policyholders. And we've set up a number of task forces, and we've had body shop owners on these working groups, task force, insurance agents, and I think it's all about working together, finding some common ground. Erica's done a good job of stating the legal side of it, but I'll tell you, the insurance industry has a lot of clout in every state legislature across the country. So the body shops and the collision repair industry is not on that level at this point.
It's the thing that we're finding here, and I communicate with people around the country, and what seems to be happening though, there's so many corners being cut on these repairs in order to stay in good graces with your insurance partner, to where consumers are ending up with not good quality, safe repairs, and then going back to an insurance company when it's their shop, and they're promoting these as a simpler, faster way, and we'll get a double guarantee. Well, then when it comes to it, when push comes to shove, and we're finding fraud, where they're not putting parts on that are being paid for, they're not doing a complete repair, they're leaving stuff undone, and then the insurance company, they want to just try to push them back to that shop and let that shop deal with it, where they've already done things that are questionable. Why would you even want to be able to go back to a shop that's done that?
That's where we're being very proactive in North Carolina. I've been very tough on insurance fraud. When I took office, January 1st of 2017, I was sworn in a minute after midnight at a volunteer fire department. I did that to show my support for the volunteer fire departments. They're so important to all of us.
Sure.
But North Carolina was the first state to put law enforcement in a Department of Insurance, and that happened in 1945. So we just celebrated this year in March our 75th anniversary of our Criminal Investigations Division. When I took office, we only had 20 sworn law enforcement officers to cover the whole state of 100 counties. In 2016, under my predecessor, this department had only made arrests in 57 out of 100 counties. So 43 out of 100 counties, no arrests for insurance fraud or arson. I really doubled down, went to work with the legislature to get more positions added. Today, we have 45 sworn law enforcement officers. That's still way short of where I feel we need to be. But within 2 years, we had doubled the number of arrests in North Carolina for insurance fraud. We have brought in almost $15 million in the past 4 years in restitution to the victims. So my message to people in North Carolina or working in North Carolina, if you have a situation where a shop, whatever it is that you think is a possible fraud situation, call us, email us. We will investigate it. We will check it out. And if it is fraud, we will make arrests. We have one, this is really nothing to do with body shops, but we got a tip on insurance fraud that turned into a first-degree murder case. And that's a national scope. I hired attorneys, 3 attorneys, that are prosecutors, experienced prosecutors that can go into the courtroom, prosecute cases, working with or at the direction or with the district attorneys in the different counties. This murder case is called the eye drop murder case, where a husband allegedly killed his wife using eye drops. She was only 32 years old. CBS News New York came down here a month ago and interviewed me for their 48-hour show. They're going to do a national story on this. But when you think about our attorneys that I hired as prosecutors are going to take this into the courtroom and actually prosecute this case. This is a first for a Department of Insurance, I think, anywhere. That's an extreme example of insurance fraud when you have a murder case. But the husband did collect a sizable sum, over $200,000, I'm told, that he purchased most of it right before her death. He had her cremated. She was an organ donor, so the hospital had saved a vial of blood. We had that tested, and that's what made the case.
Wow.
So,
wow.
You never know where these insurance fraud tips may lead, but nobody is immune from insurance fraud. So, don't take it for granted. There's all kinds of systems out there to have wreck checks, check repairs to see what kind of repairs were made. But I just tell people, if you have a concern, a question, give us a call. There's not a week that goes by that I don't get a personal call from somebody in this state that says, could you help me get this claim settled? I've been dealing with this for months. And we have a great consumer services division. We helped 258,000 people last year. And normally what happens, the person says the insurance company is only going to pay $1,200. That's all they're going to pay. All I do is give it to our consumer services folks. They contact the insurance company. They get all the information. Most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, I get calls back from people that said, thank you for helping me. I got a much higher settlement thanks to what you all did at your department. So that's what we do to help consumers here.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Mike is the type of guy that you could almost just sit and just talk. Listen to some of his stories. I'm sure he could probably spend an evening going over things. He had a very tight schedule. He's actually up for election again this year. And so hopefully we need to see people like that stay in office and provide support for consumers. So if you enjoyed, if you like what you're hearing on CrashTalk, if you want to hear more, then do a couple things. And I'm not sure how all this works, but I guess there's a thumbs up and there's a thumbs down. Hey, if it's a thumbs down, give us a thumbs down. If it's a thumbs up, tell us you liked it. And then you can subscribe. My understanding, if you subscribe, then you'll be alerted when a new episode comes up. We're trying to give a new episode every Friday night at 7 p.m. We're doing our best to do that. We're looking for people that are in the know to interview, to share information. And that's the purpose of CrashTalk. So good night. Continue to wear your mask. Stay your distance. Stay safe. See you same time, same place next week. This has been CrashTalk.